Thank y'all for listening and being here today. We're going to be talking about the innovation imperative. Does that sound funny or? Okay? Sounds funny up here, but if y'all say it's good, it's good. Donald Radachek had a neat thing. He was saying that one of our competitive advantages is that we're a little bit more innovative than the Chinese and Indians, and I think he is right in that. We have a competitive advantage on innovation, but innovation is still so new that a lot of times we don't have a really good definition for it. So first we're going to kind of start at some basics, kind of have a baseline here, and then move into where I think the world is going with innovation management and what we're seeing out there. So we're going to talk about some definitions of innovation, types and patterns, and then we're going to end with a program we have called Innovation Engineering, which is really more, how do you manage innovation nowadays? How can we practically do it? So I would just kind of like to ask the audience, maybe, would anybody like to volunteer a definition of innovation? I'm not going to ask the Georgia Tech people because they won't know. So. Even though we're called the Enterprise Innovation Institute, we all kind of were wondering about that name 10 years ago, but I think we're better today. Anybody? All right, well. Y'all are, hopefully everybody's awake. These are common definitions we see a lot. Something people say a lot of times, well, it's an idea. Well, innovation is more than an idea. An idea is creativity. We have an inventor comes up with an idea, you get a patent, but it's not commercialized yet, so it's still not an innovation. Also, it could be something patentable, and I've heard other people describe it as applied research. That also kind of fits. But our definition, we're going to use, at least for today, a working definition, is commercializing a meaningfully unique idea. And what we mean by that is we want an idea that solves a customer problem. It could be a known problem or an unknown problem. For example, I like the quote Wayne Gretzky has. He says, I always like to skate to where the puck is going to be. And Henry Ford also said, if I gave the customers what they wanted, I would have just made a faster horse. So a lot of times innovation is known and unknown customer needs, solving a problem, and having it meaningful, which usually means is there a market, is somebody willing to pay for it? The world's full of patents that are just expire or nobody does anything with or don't get commercialized. So commercialization is very important. The last part of it, unique. It needs to be a better mousetrap. So that's really the point. So let's take a couple examples here. I don't know, is there anything unique about a school desk? Probably not. But what about this? An earthquake-proof school desk. It's unique, right? Somebody could command a little bit more of a premium for that. How about a light plate? I probably would spend more than 28 cents, but maybe not much more. Anybody can think of any, you look at that, you go, well, come on, what can you do to a light plate? That's it. I mean, you can't make it meaningfully or unique. But there's a product on the market called the Neo cover. Anybody heard of it? I've only seen it on the internet. Meaningfully unique. I don't know how he's getting $28 for it. It's magnetic. You hang stuff on it. I mean, it's a good magnet. So you can hang keys or different things on it, which I thought was kind of cool, especially if you have a wall that you don't want to put a lot of holes in. Again, meaningfully unique. It's definitely unique. I guess the meaningful will come to see how many he actually sells. How about this? How about a dress? That's kind of unique, right? I mean, I haven't seen one quite that color. But not everything is meaningfully unique. So, you could have a great thing, and we talk to inventors a lot of good ideas, but, is there a market for it, or is it unique enough where someone's going to buy it? So why the innovation imperative? Strategy and survival are the main reasons. If you look at over time, basically, things become commodities, from our phone services to televisions to airlines, plastics. Almost everything is going to cost less over time. As production gets better, things become a commodity, technology improves, and we end up lowering the price. So because of that, I mean, survival, if we're only competing on price, then we got a problem. The other side is, because innovation really does pay off. If you look at this is a Georgia Tech study. It's the Georgia Manufacturing Survey. You can Google that. It comes out every 2 years. It's done by some people in our group at the Enterprise Innovation Institute. And it's a survey of state of Georgia manufacturers. So this was 738 on this survey. This was, I think, 2010. And you can see innovation, if you compete on innovation, the question basically was, if you compete, which one of these gives you the biggest bang for the buck? Innovation is going to give you more of a higher profit margin, a higher return on sales, than only competing on some of these other areas. And nothing against, obviously, competing on cost or quality or certainly voice of the customer, but innovation is really something we need to be taking a look at. Another graph, this is a little busy, but it's kind of the same data, but it's showing employee wages. So the innovation graph, employee wages and return on investment for the employees is better off than those that compete in low price or quick delivery. So good for the employees and a good strategy. Types of innovation, kind of want to move into now, we got a definition, something that's meaningfully unique that we can commercialize. So we're kind of looking at something from whether we got an idea fresh or we developed the idea, we want to get it to commercialization. So where we innovate is basically, you can argue if there's 5 categories or 4, but basically products and services, and a lot of times there's a good overlap between the two. Customers, customer groups or markets. I always say a market is just a group of people with like buying habits. So you can look at it as customer groups. Process innovation. How many were here yesterday and heard Tony? Good number, you guys. Probably most people in this room with lean and quality and a lot of robotics, a lot of things we do on the shop floor. We're really doing a lot of process innovation. And that's probably a little bit more internally focused, where the others are more kind of outward facing. How do we develop new customers, new products? And the last one, business models, is really a neat one. We're going to cover a couple examples of this. How customers or companies create value. It can be very innovative. Okay, product innovation. I had to show the requisite iPhone and iPad. Everybody would say, yeah, that's innovative. Nothing on this screen, though, was around 15 years ago, believe it or not. Well, GPSs might have started around then. But you can see we innovate on products. Everything from something neat and cool like a phone, a touchscreen phone, to something as basic as a Swiffer. How many people have a Swiffer? Wow. P&G would be proud. About 70% of the group. And how did we live without Crest white strips? I mean, wasn't around. It wasn't around. It came out in 2000. So from the mundane to the technical, we can innovate. And Chipotle, I just threw up there because I like to eat there. But it's basically a high-end Taco Bell. It's the innovation. Has anybody been there? It's high-end Mexican, but it's kind of the organic flavor, trying to get local ingredients, and it has a better taste to it. So again, they haven't been around all that long. Service innovation, this is kind of cool. A lot of the stuff with the internet, we've seen a lot of real service innovation, a lot of self-checkout counters, where you go to the internet, you can talk to somebody live, which never seems to work well for me. I sit there waiting, and I'd rather just pick up the phone and talk to somebody. And virtual web-based, from the social media stuff to a lot of us might use Eventbrite or SurveyMonkey, things that were hard to do before, like I want to send a survey out to 100 people. Well, now we have a service, you can do that. A lot of us use online banking. So product services really are the same kind of family. And when we get the internet involved, they really kind of blend together. Okay, customer market innovation. Certainly the mobile market, right? Definitely been innovation on services for people that have mobile access. Wi-Fi access, certainly OnStar and Sirius, iTunes, anything that we're doing mobily. And then I like the other one, the senior living, only because I find myself thinking, now, these are some cool products. And my wife joined AARP, and I was like, I don't know what you're doing, but I started flipping through the monthly magazine, and I'm like, yeah, this thing here, where is it? This touch screen would be really cool. And the way they advertise that thing, it's the computer for you, not your grandkids. And we have the help, I've fallen and I've not gotten up, I can't get up, mobile version, so you can fall anywhere now. So again, nothing here was around 10, 15 years ago. Well, actually, the Hover Around came out in 96, was the first one sold. And if you go around Atlanta, Midtown, I guess they're easy to get because I see a lot of people in them. So maybe that says something about insurance. The Jitterbug phone, the only phone I've ever seen with a dial tone. You know, if you're an older person, it's kind of cool. You have a phone that's big buttons and you got a dial tone. So a whole market around senior living. Business model, just touch briefly on this. We could spend a lot of time, but basically there's many business models. A lot of things you see on the web are, the freemium services. You can read a little bit of the newspaper, but for a monthly fee, you can read the whole thing. Skype is like that. We have low touch and high touch things. Southwest, you buy the ticket online, ticketless airline. Walmart, I can't tell you the last time I saw somebody in customer service at a Walmart, unless I chased them down. And then high touch, more of a lifestyle, the environmental thing. Come to Starbucks, or you come to, as I like to call it, Whole Paycheck or Whole Foods. You can really spend some money in Whole Foods. It took the whole grocery store business model and really flipped it over. Instead of high volume, low margin, it's very low volume, very high margin stuff. A lot of it is sourced locally to provide the organic flavor and things. So Whole Foods has done a really good job targeting a market that wasn't targeted. Pay per app, of course, the app stores, Wine of the Month Club. So business models, again, a lot of different ways, business models, how a company takes their products, customers, and markets and makes money with it. Okay, process innovation. Most people in here are most familiar with this one. Certainly, everything we've done with Lean over the last 10 or 15 years in quality and robotics, all the things on the shop floor, a lot attributed to the computer being invented and coming out to the shop floor. Does anybody remember when you saw your first computer on the shop floor? I mean, I remember we had it. I worked for Lucent. It was a big deal to have a computer on the shop floor. In fact, the plant manager would say, "Aren't you worried it's going to crash with all the dust in the room?" It was like you treated it like this careful thing, like it had to be in a room. But certainly all these things are process innovation, more what we've seen on the shop floor. Another type of process innovation is this thing that works. Here we go. Business management processes, and we're going to camp out here a little bit. ERP systems, customer relation management systems. Things, again, related to the computer in these cases, but things that are managing our business processes. In the world of kind of related to the shop floor and manufacturing, quality and environmental energy management systems. A lot of you are familiar with quality and environmental standards. And then we have a new energy standard that I think Holly's going to probably talk on after I finish. So we have processes that are innovative. So I want to look at one. I want to take a step back in history and look at the quality imperative and make a comparison to where innovation is at today. How many of y'all were working in manufacturing in the 80s? Oh, good. I always wondered if I was going to have a young crowd, I'd have to really dumb it down or come up with different examples. But this is good. Do y'all remember? I mean, I was at a pretty big company. I was at a plant of AT&T's, but it was a small outpost. And, you know, in the beginning, we made fiber optic cable. It was about catch it before it gets out the door, by goodness. You know, you don't want this to go out. You know, load up. We had final inspectors, you know, and that's where it started, was let's catch it before it goes out. We were very big on quality circles, quality slogans, TQM, zero defects. And all that works and is good if it would have been instituted as a management system, but it wasn't. A lot of it was flavor of the month stuff. So you ended up with a bolted on process. Well, we got better, right? We got computers out there, we moved upstream, and we're in a much better shape today and continue to be within process control. We're controlling variations, Six Sigma. We're looking at things now and have the ability to control things that frankly I wasn't able to control in the early 80s. There wasn't really equipment out there quite yet to allow me to monitor stuff real time. So we've kind of made an evolution. So today, where is quality? If you think back 20 years ago, most people didn't know what a quality management system was. It's like today, I'm going to talk about innovation management. Hopefully this will be, oh, that's what it is, or that's what it will be, or what it will look like in 20 or 30 years. So hopefully this is more of a future look, but where we can start today. But looking at quality systems, you know, ISO 9001, we have, you know, quality as a field now, right? We hire quality managers, we manage quality, we audit, we control our variation, we have all the things we're doing in Lean on the shop floor. Very, very good processes we've set up to manage our waste, reduce our waste, and improve our quality, such that that first graph I showed you, low cost and quality is really, you know, 20 years ago, you could really compete on that, but really that's not going to cut it anymore. So the third area, a pattern of innovation, this is called the diffusion curve, and basically most things follow this curve. You have people that adopt things early, and then that kind of speeds up like a snowball rolling down the hill. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it levels off. It doesn't go away necessarily. It can, but it levels off over time. So this is called a diffusion curve or adoption curve. The axis here is time, and the vertical one is, it could be number of households or percent of adoption. Usually nothing will hit 100%. Some things do. So I wanted to kind of show you a few patterns. Television sets. Took about 12 years to get the first black and white TVs into 90% of the households. Not bad, actually. People really wanted TVs. This graph is a little busy, but I'm going to come back to it and point out a couple things here. Look at VCRs. Notice all these curves, whether it's TV, cable, PCs, kind of generally follow this S-curve, which is kind of neat. The reason we're showing you a pattern is this can be somewhat predictable. But VCRs, to get 80% saturation of VCRs took about 12 years. DVDs took about 6. So you can see that the slope of this line does change. Believe it or not, it took longer for color TV adoption than it did black and white. So it's not always the case that successive technology gets implemented a lot faster. We'll come back to that graph. There's a couple of things I want to share it. So what factors affect the curve? Things like new technology. We talked about those business models and those processes. And we call that curve hopping, and I'll show you an example of that. The other one is adoption speed, how that curve, how you move along the curve. So if we look at this, new technology, records to cassettes to, well, records to cassettes to CDs to digital downloads, this is kind of that curve hopping. And when we hop a curve, in this case it's a new technology, but it could be a new business model. This is called disruptive innovation. Typically along the curve, it's more incremental innovation. And by that I mean, if you take any one of these, I mean, does anybody remember records other than me? I had records when I was a kid. I was a little bit too young to remember the 78s, but what did we call records? It was revolutions. It was named after the speed of the turntable. I still think that's interesting. And probably some engineer named it at 33 1/3. But, you know, I would go to the store. My dad would take me. I'd look at the latest 45s that I saw on Dick Clark on Bandstand or something. Which, if you weren't there, it was a show on TV that showcased. But you buy, you know, a 45. You know, what would that sound like today? It'd be like, you know, my daughter asking me, Dad, gee, can I borrow your iTunes login and download the latest hit from whoever, Justin Bieber or something. So we've really come a long way, and these are each new technologies that sort of replace the old ones, but you can still, my car still has a cassette player. It's 2005, although I haven't used it in a couple years. CDs. So you see this curve jumping, but also along the curve is probably where you have a lot of opportunity in your own company. You may not have this disruption to a new technology. You may be able to take advantage of one, though, which could move you onto the next curve. The other trend is the adoption speed. For most things, this window gets a lot shorter. Consumer electronics now, I think it's like just a couple years. So if that's the case, the product life cycle is shorter, but also the product development time has been really compressed. So if you're in that space, you know, you've really got to move quickly, because typically you want to be on this curve or jumping to the next one. Kind of the goal is when an industry's or an adoption's leveling out, it's becoming more of a commodity. You know, what can I do to get on another curve, basically? Okay, so back to this. I'm trying to think of why I showed this again. There was a reason. I guess you can see the difference in the VCR and see the DVD, how much the curve is compressed in the same amount of time frame. And then you see other things coming alongside of it, like MP3 players. So again, just really show you that they're parallel. Again, process systems. We're talking about ERP systems, things like that. Worldwide ISO registrations are flattening out. If you were to graph this, actually I could have shown it further back. It was a lot, the slope of that curve was a lot higher. So again, nothing wrong with quality, we need quality, but as a system, as a management system, it's more of a given nowadays, right? I mean, most people, you have to have a quality management system to do business with the government a lot of times, and for a lot of your, you know, customers and suppliers, or you're required of your suppliers. So again, process models evolve also. So we want to move on. The last thing I want to talk about is the future, really, the innovation process management. Obviously, the drivers we've kind of talked about. We've driven up these operational and quality efficiencies so much, you know, putting on our lean hat, we should now free up enough capacity so our marketing people and sales people, we can do new and different things or incremental improvements. So how do we take advantage of that? Well, some companies have done a very good job of this, and I'll put these guys on the early adopter side. Just quickly, Procter & Gamble has a program called Connect and Develop instead of Research and Develop. And right now, about 50% of their new products in the last few years have come from outside of Procter & Gamble. They solicit ideas called open innovation, and they have a whole system, and they're well known for doing this. 3M and Google, probably you know, they give so much percentage of time to the employee to develop cool and neat stuff that they're interested in. And then Apple doesn't really need an explanation. What I think it's going to happen, or what we see in the literature is we're somewhere, well, actually we're 2012, so physically we're somewhere here. But I think, we're in a period of time where we're moving from a buzzword and people are agreeing with the need to innovate to where eventually we're going to really see that culture change that Tony talked about yesterday. He was talking about communication and, really this is like everything else, the quality movement and the lean movement. It's more of a culture change to seeing innovation as a process. Right now, we're still in this in-between phase where, people will say, I hear it sometimes from companies, I want to be like Google or Apple. Well, chances are you're not going to be the next Google or Apple. Their culture is a lot different than your company's culture. You probably don't want it to be that. But we train folks to be innovative, and I think along this continuum, we're going to move like quality. We're not going to have a bolted-on innovation process. We're going to move to an innovation management system. So again, I'm in good company here. Dr. Deming, 94% of the problem is the process, right, and the structure. That's great, because innovation has been so nebulous. If you can tell me, Don, it's a process, that's going to make me, I'm an engineer too, it's going to make me feel good about that. That's something that sounds, it can be repeatable or it can be implemented, and I can train people. Taishi Ono had a great quote, getting brilliant results from average people, managing brilliant processes, compared to his competitors only getting average results. So I don't think I have to really beat this drum too much. Everybody in here knows good processes are the backbone. So what we want to answer then, if we have an innovation process, it should really be answer the question, how do we continually create and commercialize meaningfully unique ideas, right? If that's our definitive innovation, we want a process for it. How do we continually do it? Well, the last few slides I want to kind of wrap up with are what we really need is a system on the front end of, let's say, a stage gate, or if you're familiar with lean product development. A lot of companies have pretty robust, or some have pretty robust development processes. But the problem we see is what happens before it gets into development. A lot of times, we have these two, I'm going to call them stages. We have a need for a process where we really have to look at these ideas and define them, make them more clear, and then really discovery, go into a process where we can really look at these ideas while it's very risky, but we're not spending any money. The investment's very low. So how do we do that? Or what is a way to do that? It's sometimes called the fuzzy front end of innovation. But how about spending 5%, or maybe money-wise, or a third of your time in these two earlier phases? And we use some tools and techniques and training where we really look at clarifying the ideas. A lot of times companies have, for example, an innovation pipeline. Things go, we talked about the types of ways we can innovate, but what a lot of times happens is this. We have ideas that just jump right to development. It's the plant manager or the owner thinks this is a good idea, let's develop it. Marketing says we should do it. How many of y'all have had products in your company or a company that never sold well? Most people. So it's like, how do we avoid that? We know product development is inherently risky, and we want to fail fast and fail cheap, we call it, but we need to do it not on the development end, but on the ideation end. So processes we're looking at are things that look at death threats. What can kill this idea early? Let's figure it out and kill it, or move on and develop it, or move it closer to development. So there's an area here that's missing nowadays, and I think in the next 10 or 15 years, asking a company, what's your process for innovation or moving things through, it's going to be more than just, well, we have a product development process. Because there's a lot in the pipeline, and a lot of times it's the bottleneck issue. It never moves because we don't have a good way to vet or evaluate the ideas. So the innovation engineering, I kind of got chopped off at the top, is kind of a program, a system that we're working with companies that kind of define this front end for your organization. How can you develop new products and services? A lot of the ideas are not necessarily products. They may be marketing or the way you're reaching out to new customers or existing customers. So it's not just really, in fact, the majority of successes we've had has not been on the product side necessarily, but has been on some better ways companies have marketed. So it really can be across the board. So the last thing, kind of the last couple slides I want to leave you with are, oh, and by the way, I should mention, out by the table there is a flyer. Well, this is the wrong flyer, but I have a slide of it, but that's okay, I'll show it to you. Pick up a flyer anyway. We got a couple small case studies on it where we've shown some actual results from manufacturers we've worked with. Guess what? What do you think our success rate was? Give me a percent, anybody?
60%.
Oh, no. No, it's probably more like 25%, maybe 20%. Because, again, we're talking about a culture change and not a flavor of the month. So not everywhere we go in, we can do a couple-month short program, but we're looking for, as we like to do in the MEP system, we want to teach you to fish. We want to make it sustainable. So last things I want to talk about is maybe just a thought question for you. Where are you on your organization's business life cycle curve? If birth is on the left and the right is maybe we transfer ownership to a son or a daughter, family member, we liquidate, we sell, whatever. Where are you on the curve? Typically, if you're on the left side and growing, you tend to be more proactive. And if you're on the right side, that tends to be more reactive. So we talk to companies, and this is a good thought question. It really makes people stop and think and like, gee, where am I on this curve? And innovation really allows you to relaunch your curve. Whether you're here or coming over the top, or if you're already a commodity, what can I do either incrementally or disruptively to relaunch this curve so I'm not just competing on cost and quality? That's really the game. So, like everything else, the business curve, the business has a life cycle. A study done by Eureka Ranch in Cincinnati, who partnered with our parent company, not our parent company, our parent sponsor, NIST, did a bunch of surveys about, what are the commonalities about these people that are on the left side of the curve and the right side. And basically they found, a good thought question, much higher percent have sales that come from new products, new markets, new customers in the last 3 years, 3 to 5 years, both domestically and export, than those that were on the right side of the curve. So, a couple internal questions for you. Where are you on the curve? And then some ways to answer that. What have you internally developed in the way of customers or markets or products in the last 3 to 5 years? It's a good place to start. And again, the reason we want to do that, it's the imperative. We need to compete on innovation. This graph has kind of been this way for the last 10 years, roughly, of this survey. The 2012 data I don't have up here, just came out, and it's basically the same trend. Georgia manufacturers, I think this is very real. We've just got to get better at, let's move on from a buzzword and turn innovation more into a process. This is the flyer you need to pick up. Pick this up on your way out. It's got 4 client examples. We worked with Benell Aluminum, LPS Labs here in town that makes lubricants, and a couple other companies. And it goes through some examples of what we did. And it kind of gives you a broader picture of what this process, what innovation engineering could possibly do for you. And I'll be around afterwards if anybody wants to talk with me. And if you're interested, there is a good website, innovationmanagement.se. It's actually a Swedish site. And actually, they're putting out more papers now on actual innovation management. And if you go to that or just scan it sometime, it's becoming more of a, I guess it's always been a field of study, but it's becoming more practical as time is going on. Because I really think you're going to see, I would not be at all surprised to see an ISO standard on, in fact, I know they're working on the beginnings of an innovation management ISO standard, I was told by a coworker. So, not sure what it entails, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see a live version of that in 10 or 15 years. All right, well, thank you very much. We have probably a time for one or two questions. Yes, sir.
What do you think the impact is going to be from the Apple lawsuit against Samsung on innovation?
That's a good question because they won. I don't know. I think you're going to see, maybe less innovation on tablets until they get it squared away. I really don't know. But that was interesting that Apple very well protected that. I really didn't think they were going to win. That's going to be a good one to watch.
John, do you have some availability for training for our folks on innovation specifically?
Actually, we would probably have to do something custom, but we can do that.
To try to get that into a culture within a company?
Yeah, we can chat on that, yeah. Unfortunately or fortunately, the best way, innovation is one of those things, it's better caught than taught. You really kind of have to, it's like lean, until you actually do something and experiment with it. It's hard to just have a lecture on it, but we do some practical things, and we'll be glad to talk to anybody here on that. Other comments, questions? Yes, sir.
The return on investment in innovation, does that consider the expense on the stuff that failed?
I'm not sure your question.
Well, when you innovate, you have to, the common metric is that more than half of the stuff that you try fails, and only 10% of it goes through. So the return on investment, does it consider the cost of the expense of the products that fail?
That's a good question. I really don't know, because I took that from the Georgia Tech study, so I'm not really sure, but it's a good question.
Well, the graph showed margin, profit margin represented on investment. So it was the innovative price.
Okay. I think you're right. If you're interested though, if you Google the Georgia Manufacturing Survey, it has some detail on the background where that data came from. All right, well, I'm going to turn it over to Holly Law, and thank y'all very much.
Thanks, Don.